What is the net result in terms of what the pacing and just
That's
the feeling?
Beautiful question. So if you take the first movement has different kinds of music. For instance, dum bum ba dum bum ba dee dum ba dee dum ba dee bum ba dee bum ba dee. That's his tempo. It is great at that tempo, or the fugue in the development. You wouldn't want it slower, and in fact, when it's played slower by the romantic view, it sounds rather dull and pompous, right? Beethoven was not pompous. He was shaking his fist like this. So he goes yum bum ba bum, but then the winds go bum bum ba. So you've got two worlds. You've got the world of the driving force, the forward motion, and then you've got the tender contemplative side, life and death. These two are united. And so what I've discovered in this music is much more variety by letting go of what I call the white knuckle approach, where you're really, and I made a recording with Philharmonic, which is good for people to know. It's on my website, which is benjaminzander.org. It's a kind of Alice in Wonderland world of
very
music.
rich site.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And that recording with the Philharmonic Orchestra in London, one of the greatest orchestras, Philharmonic Chorus, and with that recording goes a talk. I always talk about the music before, and this is a long talk. It's 2.5 hours of explanation of how this whole story went from the beginning to the end, taking each of the sections of the piece and describing and explaining what happened. That's there. It's there as a kind of homage to Beethoven, because I'm sure he would be very grateful for many of the things I've done. For instance, there's one passage in the slow movement where there's a big fanfare. Everybody in the orchestra is playing, except for one instrument, the timpani. They're left out until right at the end they play 2 notes. The reason for that is Beethoven at that time only had 2 drums, and he couldn't tune them in between. So I've replaced it and put it in. And of course, it seems it would be idiotic. Everybody does it. They leave it blank, but it makes no sense. And I'm sure he's up in heaven scoffing at the prudery and the puritanical. So we've made many adjustments, always with the idea, what would Beethoven have wanted? And in my conception of the symphony, which I'm very excited about, I'm not thinking of him conducting it because he was deaf. He couldn't hear it. He was completely deaf. He was there trying to conduct. But what I think of him sitting at the piano, like the greatest pianist maybe who ever lived. People described him as just mesmerizing, greater than Liszt, and sitting playing the piano with the kind of freedom of an individual. And that I'm trying to channel that person in my mind.
Since you talk about it as such an accessible, such a ubiquitous piece of music, how does it feel as a consumer of this music, your current interpretation, or as a conductor? Obviously, you're doing as both. But when you think about the experience yourself for what you've now done with this, do you come away with a different experience?
Well, we haven't heard it yet. It's going to be heard in Boston on February 24th and in New York on February 26th.
So TBD, I suppose.
Exactly. And when people ask me, how long is it going to last? I say, I have no idea. We haven't done it yet because I don't know how much time. And it'll be different every time.
It's interesting. I think of Beethoven in the same realm as, say, Shakespeare, where part of the beauty of it is the ways in which it's interpreted and reinterpreted in modern life, bringing in new characters. You talk about sort of the being a purist. Has your feeling about how you approach music shifted over your career in that respect?
Well, I'm older. I'm 84, so there's a certain kind of ease that comes with it, and joy. And also, I know,
also the masters.
I don't have that many more. I mean, this is maybe the last time I ever do the Beethoven, right? So I have. Also, what is the piece about? The piece is not about being correct. The piece is about joy. It's about humanity. It's the hymn to the dream, the capacity of human beings to dream. And that is something very different from being right. And what he's inviting us to do is to give up all the assumptions and all the restrictions of life that we come with. And there's a wonderful phrase, which of course he took from Schiller, Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Your magic, talking to God, your magic has bound together what habit and fashion have torn apart. Now, that's at the heart of this piece, because every conflict in the world today is the result of people having assumptions and making conditions and habit and fashion. That is what's torn people apart. If people would give up those habits, and those habits of fear, habits of suspicion, habits of so many things we take into our life, which causes all these conflicts. And what he's saying beyond that is the possibility, the dream of human beings living together as brothers. It's a very powerful message today.